The Stone Zone with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome, I'm Roger Stone, and yes, we were back in the Stone Zone. My co-host, Troy Smith, is on assignment today, so I'll be going solo. Over the weekend, shocking news. Here's the headline from the New York Times. The Biden administration has authorized the use of long-range U.S. missiles that we have provided to NATO to strike targets deep within Russia. This seems to be a provocation for World War III. This comes on the heel only weeks ago after the election when Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that they would ship as many dollars out the door to Ukraine as they possibly could before Donald Trump assumed the presidency. There is no one better to help us break this down than former National Security Advisor and America's General, my good friend, General Michael Flynn.
Thank you, Roger. I'm on the road here today, so I hope that you guys can see me and hear me. Can you?
We can hear you. You're a little frozen, but we'll move ahead anyway. Thank you for joining us. You are and you're always on the road for America.
Yeah, and so I just want to add before I jump into the answering and addressing this issue, because it's a really critical, vital national security issue. I just want to tell your audience, once again, thank you, Roger Stone, for getting and convincing Donald J. Trump to run for president years ago, and what a struggle it has been for every single one of us that have joined his camp. But I just want to personally thank you, and I don't know if you get enough thanks, to be honest with you, for that specific reason, because had it not been for you, I don't think Donald Trump would have really given it serious thought. So let me jump to your question, Roger, because it is a really critical question, and I've been paying attention to Russia's response, mainly Putin's response, and Putin is going to take this very seriously. The way that the Russians will look at this, because the Ukrainians have no capability, and I mean zero capability, to operate these weapon systems. The weapon systems require satellite tracking, targeting acquisition, and range finding. So they're going to require massive satellite intelligence and operational capabilities that the Ukrainians have no capability of. And so that capability either has to come from the United States of America, or a combination of NATO and the United States of America. And the European Union, if somebody says, well, the European Union is behind some of this, the European Union is not supposed to be a military alliance, even though there are parts of the European Union that do have a military structure to them. So this is a really dangerous phase that the United States of America, because these ATACMS, long-range missile capabilities, are clearly designed for offensive purposes. They were put in place not too long ago. And now we have, out of the State Department, out of the Department of Defense, and out of the White House itself, a statement of fact that really says we're going to allow these missiles to be used by Ukraine to target deep into Russia. So obviously Putin is going to have a response. What that response is and what the placement of their resources are, I don't know yet. It would be speculating on my behalf, but I will tell you, and I'll stop here, that I do believe that the nuclear arsenal of Russia, especially what they call their tactical nukes, although I don't believe that they're anything such as a tactical nuke. All nuclear weapons have a severe capability to do great damage. I do believe that that's going to have to be something that Putin is going to have to examine And the displacement and moving around of some of those capabilities is something that now the United States of America is going to have to pay very close attention to. So these are very dangerous steps that the U.S. is now engaging in after a very successful election for a president that is going to be fighting for peace and not for more war.
General Flynn, isn't it kind of logical to think that with both Zelensky of Ukraine and Putin signaling to Trump that they're ready to sit down, they've been ready to sit down. The only reason there have been no peace negotiations, no settlement talks, is because the current administration favors war. They want war. Don't you think at this juncture that both the Ukrainians and the Russians might utilize restraint in the hopes that they could avoid a nuclear holocaust?
Absolutely, and there is a good peace deal on the table, and I think it's very, very much worth consideration. I know that that Trump has some ideas about how this thing can be calmed down, and we can achieve a conversation and a political discourse to basically get a rebalancing of the geopolitical front in Eastern Europe. We have to have that. We cannot continue down this path because it's going to draw us into something that we do not want to be part of, and we don't want to get drawn into. We certainly don't want the consequences of some type of global outbreak here. And remember that what this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has done is they have pushed Putin closer to China, to Xi, and now we also have the indicators that there are North Koreans that are on the battlefield of Russia now. So there is a good peace deal on the table. It is very worth sitting down. I believe that from what I've read in the last couple of weeks here, particularly in this past week, is Zelensky is being pushed by the United States principally to not sit down with and appear as though Donald Trump also got the upper hand on this administration, which has just a feckless foreign policy that's going to cause us greater damage and greater consequences and greater costs. And I'm afraid in these next 2 months, we're going to see more of the same here, Roger. And I'm really concerned that and I honestly think that Trump at some point in time is just going to have to pick up the phone and call up President Biden and say, WTH, what are you doing here? I mean, we can't keep going down this path. I don't want to walk into World War III here, something that is clearly avoidable.
All right, there we have it, folks. First of all, let me thank you for your kind comments at the top. No one has been more loyal to President Donald Trump than you have, General. I'm proud to call you a friend. You are a great American. For those who haven't seen the General's film, his biographical film, it is an absolute must-see. I highly recommend it to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you have limited time. God bless you, my friend, and travel safe.
And yeah, and there's another, the flynnmovie.com, that's where they can go. But that movie was done because you've influenced that decision as well. So Roger, you've done a lot of good for a lot of people that are fighting back. So God bless you, and I really appreciate your friendship.
Thank you, my friend. Travel safe.
All right,
folks, here we are on the cusp of World War III, thanks to the Biden administration. This comes on the heels of announcement several weeks ago. We got a couple videos here that pertain to this issue. Let's roll the first one.
As we're working to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend itself, the United States continues to step up. We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
There you have it. I mean, so they know that they're being replaced. They know that Donald Trump is about to assume power. They know that he wants to bring this conflict to a swift end. He said repeatedly that he wants to stop the killing. Above all, he wants to stop the killing. This has been a disaster for both nations. But rather than recognize the will of the people in the most recent election, they want to get as much money out the door as they possibly can. We got another video here pertaining to this issue. Let's roll it.
Если это решение будет принято, это будет означать не что иное, как прямое участие стран НАТО, Соединенных Штатов, европейских стран в войне на Украине. Это их прямое участие. И это уже, конечно, существенным образом меняет саму суть, саму природу конфликта. Это будет означать, что страны НАТО, США, европейские страны воюют с Россией.
Now you see there Putin saying essentially that he is unafraid, but he's made it very clear that even an attack on Russia by a non-NATO nation, that would be Ukraine, could elicit a strong response from the Soviets. There's a veiled threat there. Here's Putin yet again giving that very warning.
In the updated version of the document, aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the support of a nuclear state, is proposed to be considered as their joint attack on Russia. Russia will also consider the possibility of using nuclear weapons when receiving reliable information about a massive launch of means of aerospace attack and their crossing of our state border. This includes strategic and tactical aircraft, as well as cruise missiles and drones, hypersonic and other delivery vehicles. Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in case of aggression, including if the enemy, using conventional weapons, poses a critical threat.
Once again, now here is Zelensky's response, which to me seems provocative.
The plan to strengthen Ukraine is the victory plan, which I presented to our partners. One of its key points is long-range capabilities for our army. Today, there's a lot of talk in the media about us receiving permission for respective actions. But strikes are not carried out with words. Such things are not announced. Missiles will speak for themselves. They certainly will.
All right, we're going to be watching this issue very carefully. Meanwhile, the Trump transition is moving forward with a series of high-level appointments. As you know, Secretary of State has been designated as Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, a combat veteran who currently is an analyst and commentator at Fox. Tulsi Gabbard, my favorite appointment as the National Director of Intelligence. Former Congressman John Ratcliffe as the head of the Central Intelligence Agency. Upstate North Florida Congressman Mike Waltz, a military hero and veteran, as the National Security Advisor. To my surprise, Congressman Matt Gaetz, a true firebrand, as our next Attorney General. The question, of course, is that whether the Congress and the rhinos in Congress will cooperate in getting confirmation of any of these and other appointments. Now, confirmation is required by the Senate. However, if the Senate and the House are out of session, this would allow the president to make what are called recess appointments. Those are appointments in which those appointees could take office and begin fulfilling their duties. Mitch McConnell was rolled out yesterday. He looks half dead. He seems to not remember that he no longer runs the United States Senate. And he said there will be no recess appointments. Well, unfortunately, or I should say fortunately, it's not up to him. Here's Speaker Mike Johnson, who I had a conversation about this very subject this past Saturday night at Mar-a-Lago. Let's see what the speaker has to say.
What happened?
Listen, I believe in the principle of a new president being able to choose his team, and that used to not be a controversial notion. We're in a time of very divided government and a very partisan atmosphere in Washington. I wish it were not. I wish the Senate would simply do its job of advice and consent and allow the president to put the persons in his cabinet of his choosing. But if this thing bogs down, it would be a great detriment to the country, to the American people. Remember, they just delivered a mandate to the president, an overwhelming overwhelming popular vote victory and of course, electoral college victory. And they have sent the message that America First policies should be the rule of the day. So the persons that the president is choosing will help with that agenda. They will take their leadership in these agencies and they will reform them as the people expect and demand. So we'll evaluate all that at the appropriate time and we'll make the appropriate decision. There may be a function for that and we'll have to see how it plays out.
Okay.
So there you have it. I think we may get recess appointments. All of the president's appointments are controversial. That's because they're for America first. More than ever before, Donald Trump is threatening business as usual in Washington. And you now see the difference between Donald Trump circa 2017 and Donald Trump today. He's much, much wiser to the tricks of the permanent establishment and the deep state, and he is committed to appointing people who understand that their job is not to dilute his agenda, to delay his agenda, or to derail his agenda. Every one of these appointees understands that their job is to implement the president's America First agenda, not to substitute their own agenda. Here's a video that I really have to show because it's extraordinary. Jon Stewart, not one of my favorite people, interviewing Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks. The level of arrogance in this interview is something I want the StoneZONE viewers to see.
To be doing, like, there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse within a system.
Audits and waste, fraud, and abuse are not the same thing. So let's decompose these
Then please
pieces
educate me on
Sure.
what
So an
the
audit is
difference
exactly what you just described,
Yes.
which is, do I know what was delivered to which place?
Right.
The ability to pass an audit or the fact that the DOD has not passed an audit is not suggestive of waste, fraud, and abuse. That is completely false right there. So
what is
now
it
it's a question of, it's suggestive that we don't have an accurate inventory that we can pull up of what we have where. That is not the same as saying we can't do that because waste, fraud, and abuse has occurred.
So in my world,
Yeah.
that's waste.
How is that waste?
If I give you $1 billion and you can't tell me what happened to it, that to me is wasteful. That means you are not responsible. But if you can't tell me where it went, then what am I supposed to think? And when there has been reporting, I mean, this is not, look, I'm not saying this is on you and that you caused this, but I think it's a tough argument to
I'm pretty
make
sure
that
I didn't cause it.
an $850 billion budget to an organization that can't pass an audit and tell you where that money went. Like, I think most people would consider that somewhere in the realm of waste, fraud, or abuse because they would wonder why that money isn't well accounted for. And especially when they see food insecurity on military bases and they see...
You want to talk about that? Because that's a good... we should be talking... I mean,
Well,
I'm trying to understand where you're trying to go other than the dollars, which really bother you.
I think it doesn't really bother me. I think it's all connected.
Okay.
I think
tell
when
me,
I
tell
look...
me that story. Tell me how you're thinking about that.
When I see a State Department get a certain amount of money and a military budget be 10 times that, and I see a struggle within government to get people like more basic services, and then that department that got that, I mean, we got out of 20 years of war and the Pentagon got a $50 billion raise. Like, that's shocking to me. Now, I may not understand exactly the ins and outs and the incredible magic of an audit, but I'm a human being who lives on the earth and can't figure out how $850 billion to a department means that the rank and file still have to be on food stamps. Like, to me, that's fucking corruption. I'm sorry. And if that blows your mind, and if you think like that's like a crazy agenda for me to have, I really think that that's institutional thinking and that it's not looking at the day-to-day reality of the people that you call the greatest fighting force in the world. So I get back to this idea of like, I'm not looking to pick a fight with you, but I am surprised at that the reaction to these questions are, you don't know what an audit is, bucko. Like, that's just weird to me.
Okay.
The level of arrogance there is really something to behold. There's another issue in the news that I want to address, and that is the bankruptcy auction of the assets of InfoWars. InfoWars, of course, the platform by my good friend Alex Jones. Now, the bankruptcy court has ruled that Jones must sell off all of the assets of InfoWars. They're still fighting also to seize and sell off his intellectual property. In other words, his Twitter handle, his Twitter feed, for example. They really seek to stop him from using his own name, which is crazy. Now, late last week, there were reports that the bankruptcy trustee had chosen a bid by the owners of The Onion, a satirical website, over the bid that I put together with a group of others that was a cash bid. Believe me, friends, I only have in sweat equity, and I have a very small part of the deal. But I help to bring together investors who do have real money. And there was a pre-qualifying requirement. You had to show that you had the cash necessary immediately to fund your offer. Incredibly, the bankruptcy trustee took a bid from the owners of The Onion that utilizes future cash payments from Alex Jones that would be received based on the bankruptcy judgments against him. This is crazy. This is bid rigging. This is illegal. Now, a judge has halted that transaction, and then Elon Musk has filed a notice of appearance before the bankruptcy court to be heard in this matter. I'm not sure if that means that he's particularly interested in thwarting their efforts to take away Alex Jones's Twitter presence, his handle and his profile on Twitter, now known as X, or whether there's something deeper here and perhaps there will be a new auction. Here's what I say. The whole thing is a fugazi. It's a fraud. It is outrageous, and it will play out in court. We will keep you up to date on those developments. All right, joining us now is the Chief Executive Officer of Archangel Films in LA, who has worked as an executive producer, unit production manager, line producer, actress, but today she's here in a different capacity. She is a national elder rights activist and the founder of Elderly Lives Matter USA. I had her on my 77 WABC radio show a few weeks ago. It was one of the most popular segments we've ever had. Angelique, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to meet you virtually, and it's an honor to be on your show. So thank you. I love your shows.
You have a very interesting and important issue here that I think most Americans are not fully aware of, but they need to be. There's approximately 345 million people living in America in 2024. The last reported estimate in 2022, there were 57.8 million elderly people in America. The elderly represent 17.3% of the population as of 2022. There are approximately 1.3 million adult conservatorships and guardianships in the United States, and an estimated $50 billion in assets under control of those conservatorships and guardianship arrangements. 85% of these Americans are over 65 and are in abusive and restrictive conservatorships and guardianships where they die without their human, civil, constitutional, or ADA rights. This is a national scandal, and I give you enormous credit for doing something about it. So tell us about the issue. Tell us about some of your personal experiences, some of them with people who are in these conservatorships or guardianships who are extraordinarily well known. Many Americans are familiar with the controversy surrounding Britney Spears. That is, pardon me, the tip of the spear when you see what's going on here. So, Angelique, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for caring about this topic and caring about this just such an important issue. Yes, I am a nationwide elder rights activist. I'm also a filmmaker as well. I pretty much do everything 50-50. I got into this unfortunate sector of life due to someone that I care about very much. Nichelle Nichols was my second mother. She played Lieutenant Uhura on original Star Trek. And what I saw happen to her is something that I will never be able to unsee. And I'd like to say that, you know, the activists in my community do not become activists because they want to. It is because they have seen their mother, their father, their grandmother, their grandfather, their aunt, their uncle, their next door neighbor, their good friends fall into an abusive conservatorship or guardianship. This happens in all 50 states. And additionally, it happens all over the world. But I'd like to focus on what's really going on in America. So conservatorships and guardianships are basically an extremely restrictive control that the government has over the elderly, where, for example, someone is slightly sick. Someone's slightly sick enough to go to the hospital, right? And so they go to the hospital and just not feeling that well. You go and you sit in front of the doctor, right? Then maybe a social worker comes in. It's either the social worker or the doctor. They come in and they ask you questions such as, oh, well, how are you feeling today? Oh, you know, how is it? How is your foot? How's your rib? How is your cough? And then they sneak in questions such as, how is it at home? How's your marriage? Do you live with your kids? You know, is it hard for you? Oh, you know, really, what do? You make that much money, really? Right? Next thing you know, these are really pervasive questions that really shouldn't be asked. When I've gone to the hospital, I refuse mini mentals because that's what it's called. Basically, they then take that information to the doctor, social worker, depending upon who gets it first. Next thing you know, that information is given to a conservator or a guardian that works with that doctor or that hospital. Next thing you know, that conservator guardian has gone to the court and said, this person needs to be in a guardianship or a conservatorship. Why? Because the doctor said so. And you could just not be feeling well that day. You're not sick. You don't need to be in a conservatorship or guardianship. And next thing you know, whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later, you have someone knocking at your door saying, you have to come with us. The court has ordered for you to be in a conservatorship and or a guardianship. And if you think that, because I think a lot of us, we're very strong people. There's a lot of people, members of the NRA, and we say, oh no, we wouldn't let that happen to us. It happens anyway. And this conservator or guardian is at your front door, has a sheriff there with them and or police, and say that you have to come with them. So you go with them. And even if you said you didn't want to go, you're going to go to jail. So either way, when you get out of jail, you'll be in that conservatorship or guardianship. If you don't go with them, they're going to, if you go with them, you're going to be in it. So that's basically how it tends to happen. Sometimes in families, there are certain family members, we all want to feel that we have great families, and that's wonderful. And a lot of us do. But we all have to be real too, that there are some people in families that do not have their best interest out for certain individuals they might be estranged from. So sometimes family members come in who, end up just wanting the money or wanting the land or wanting the estate, will come in and put their mother or father into use of conservatorship or guardianship. And what brought me to this world is, like I said, is Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle Nichols was my second mom. I loved her dearly. She passed away July 30th, 2022 in an abusive conservatorship. I followed her directions. She was put into a conservatorship back in 2013. And she went to she was put into a rest home in 2013. And when she escaped that rest home in tears, she said, Angelique, I want you to please have my back. Please do not let someone do this to me ever again. I don't care if it's my son. I don't care if it's whomever. Please don't let this happen to me again. Well, I'm a woman of my word. She made me a second on her power of attorney, her manager being first. I cannot say that I agree with any of the parties within this, within Michelle's situation, neither her son nor the manager, because I was standing up for her human and civil rights. So she ended up living years, you know, doing film, doing TV, winning awards. And then she ended up, her son put her into a conservatorship in 2018. I went to court. I stood up for her human, civil, constitutional rights. And I said, look, this is not what she wants. She has stated it. I have it on tape. She has everything in order. And the first judge kind of listened, right? I did get a visitation rights with her. But then after that, she had another judge that was over her case who refused to see all of the evidence. And by that point, Michelle was physically and publicly mentally abused by her son on tape. It was all over the internet, and the judge refused to look at the evidence. So here's a dear friend that loved me through everything, a second mom, called me like a daughter to her. I needed to keep my word. And what happened? She ended up being sentenced to her death. She basically, the judge did not pay attention, and she was sent to another state that she didn't want to live in. And that was the end of her life. All she wanted to do was to stay in her home until she died, and work and visit her fans. And I think that's a really, you know, easy request to honor, but it wasn't honored at all. So I fought for her with all of my heart. And I want to thank the Free Britney movement as well, because I worked with the Free Britney movement on the ground, closing down streets, rallying, speaking. And the Free Britney movement really stood up for Nichelle Nichols. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think that as young people, they really, really showed what they had within them, their love for Britney Spears as an artist, but also their desire to end what the injustice that is occurring in our nation.
You know, it's very interesting. The legendary Chicago radio personality Mancow told me that he was in Beverly Hills and he saw Mickey Rooney. Now, he had had Mickey Rooney on his radio program, and he walked up to him and said, "Hey, Mickey, how you doing?" And he was immediately manhandled by several heavy-duty security guards and said, "Hey, you can't talk to him. You can't talk to him." Mickey Rooney wasn't even allowed to answer a simple question. Mancow checked into it. It was during the time that Mickey Rooney was under a conservatorship. This is one of the legendary cases. Mickey Rooney, a legendary American actor who, as you know, got his start in the Andy Hardy series. This is happening not just to celebrities, obviously, who have some wealth. It's happening to everyday people. So let's move to the most important question, which is, what is the solution? You've had some success in California changing the law. What you're seeking to do is change federal law. Tell us about those efforts.
Yes, the one law that we just recently passed with Carrie Kasem helped me with my case, as well as she helped Kelly Rooney with her father's case, Mickey Rooney. And by the way, if people don't know that Mickey was a veteran, he actually served in Patton's army, and he's on record stating, "I don't want to be in a conservatorship." Nichelle Nichols stated she also didn't want to be in a conservatorship, and the judge went against their wishes anyway. So the law that we just passed in the state of California is now called the Kasem Nichols Rooney Law, SB 1106. The governor signed it into law about a month or so ago. But that is a visitation law, so that when people are suffering and they're trying to visit their parent, but their parent is stuck in a conservatorship and there's a conservator or people guarding that person so they can't see him, just like your instance you just shared with Mickey Rooney, they said, "You can't talk to him, you can't talk to him." Now, Mickey Rooney probably would have said hello, you know, and wanted to talk to him. But these people, these gatekeepers that are tend to be abusive, isolating, which is against the law as well. They will stop you from seeing those people. So the case of Nichols-Rooney law gives people, children and activists, the ability to utilize that law in order to be able to absolutely get to see their parent when their parent is being negligently isolated by a conservator, an attorney, a court-appointed attorney, another son, another daughter, whomever. So it's a step, right? Because there's so many laws that are already in the books, but they're not being followed. So the federal laws, there are many solutions across the nation. It's like I said, I founded Elderly Lives Matter USA, but there are many organizations across the nation, including Some Cares, including so many different organizations, Judicialpedia and Ugly Judge and Court Victim, all across the nation. One of the first things that we would like to implement is a judicial oversight committee. And that would be a committee that would be in each state, but it would be a federal committee so that when people are suffering in the courts, you have a judge not listening, not following the law, not acknowledging the human, civil, and constitutional rights of the elderly, right? You have that person not following the law. You have a judicial oversight committee where the individuals in the committee they're not part of the judiciary. They are not an attorney. They're not a conservator. These are educated citizens who understand and know the law, and that they can help the process so that if a judge is making a wrong decision and they know it, then that judicial oversight committee has to come down on the judge, because the judge is there for us to help us, gain justice. And especially the elderly. The elderly are, there's groups for everyone, Roger. There's groups for children. There's groups for so many different people in the world. And those groups are necessary, but we need to start looking out for our elderly. And if we don't realize it, I'm 54, right? I'm getting up there, right? So many people are getting up there, but we don't want to see this happen to our elderly. So we stand up. So Judicial Oversight Committee is one, so that the judges and whoever making the poor decisions, violating the rights of the elderly has to be held accountable for it. Another solution would be implementing supported decision-making into ADA laws. Supported decision-making is a less restrictive way of helping the elderly. So instead of having this really angry conservator that's, abusing them, beating them up, mentally abusing them, financially abusing them, you have a person who's more like a personal assistant, helping them figure out the computer, figure out what their next court date is, figure out what they want to eat for lunch, and not lording it over them. That could be implemented into ADA laws, which is American with Disabilities laws. Many people do not know, this is very important. Dementia and Alzheimer's fall under ADA laws. So if you are sick, or say you're not sick before you don't have dementia or Alzheimer's first, and you write your will or your trust, you do everything you need to do to be in order, and say you get dementia or Alzheimer's, that will is still in place. It's still valid, right? So you should still be able, the judges, the attorneys still need to follow what your wishes are. You're a human being, right? Are we not? I know we are. Last time I looked. So, those laws, those wishes need to be followed, right? Then another solution would be RICO. A lot of people don't understand that with RICO, there are groups of people who will come after the elderly. And I mean groups, sometimes 4, sometimes 8, sometimes 20, because they can go after the elderly individual's money. And it takes a team of people to be able to do that. They can take their land, they can take their house, they can, sell their house in one day. All of a sudden it's gone, it's liquidated. Who got it? How did it happen like that? And that's very important that I believe those RICO laws be prosecuted. Additionally, the activists and the children who fight for their parents, they are also retaliated against, slandered, libeled, and they're fighting for what's right. They're trying to stand up for their mom. My second mom was a Shelley. You stand up for them, but you also pay for it too, right? And this is not right, because we are standing as activists across the nation, and we are not underground. We are standing up for the human civil rights, constitutional rights, and ADA rights of people, elderly people across the nation. I know veterans who are sitting on the street right now because their whole life has been turned over by some conservator or guardian coming in to their life and taking everything they've got. There's a gentleman actually in Chicago right now in his car, and he can't get out of it. He doesn't know where his wife is, and we're all trying to help him. It's just people across the nation. Another thing is that, you may or may not know, is that prisoners currently have more rights than the elderly. So if you're in jail and you have committed a crime, you have more rights than what the elderly have. So things like that need to change. And then the judges need to have no immunity for committing crimes against the elderly. If you've sent an elderly individual to their death, you didn't review the evidence, you didn't allow them to go to court when they asked to go to court, especially, you've made a decision that can destroy and end their life. They need to have no immunity for the wrong decisions they've made. So those are just some of the decisions, but some of the solutions. There's a lot of additional solutions that we could have, including court watchers. A lot of court hearings, everyone can't get in there to watch the court hearing. So many of us activists are trying to log on, but the judges and the attorneys don't want us to see what's happening, and they don't want us to support the elderly person there, nor do they want us to support the activist or son or daughter who's standing up for their mother and father. They literally block us out, and we're done. We're not going to allow this anymore, and we are fighting hard.
Now, pardon me for my candor. This is all about the money, right?
Yes.
It's all about the money. Do you suspect that some of these judges are corrupted themselves? In other words, do you think I hate to use this word, but let's be honest, I think there are kickbacks or referrals? I mean, when a judge ignores evidence of the kind of abuse that you're describing, you have to wonder what the judge's motive is, no?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes.
This
There
is
are
an
judges, I could sit here and say, like some people, are afraid to say things. No, I've stood up against judges and Free Britney movement when that was going on, even Michelle's judge. I told her, it's like, look, this is not over. You don't just get to do this to people. If we allow judges, anyone, to violate our human rights, our civil rights, our constitutional rights, and ADA rights, if we allow anyone to violate our rights, our parents' rights, anyone's rights, we create a precedent, and it keeps on happening over and over and over again. It is absolutely all about the money, because in the end, a lot of times the elderly are just put in a rest home and abused, and is severely abused at that. I have so many stories. There's so many Americans across the nation, patriots, that really shouldn't be going through this. No one should be going through this. And the thing is, it's nonpartisan. This can happen to anyone, and it does.
Well, I think this is a very important fight. So let me say, firstly, you can count me in. Now, I've got a lot of friends in Washington. I don't lobby anymore. I'm not a lobbyist. Lobbyists get paid for their activities lobbying members of Congress and the government. I did that 30 years ago. I don't do it anymore. I'm not interested in doing it for anyone, but I will volunteer to help you get your aims achieved in Washington. I know my way around Washington, having come out of the swamp myself. I'd like to talk about how you pay for this, because I know it can't possibly be coming completely from your pocket. How can people support this effort to get the kind of federal and state reforms required to protect the elderly?
You know what? Elderly Lives Matter, actually, we are not a 501c3 or 501c4. We are people who just really care about people, and we do it out of our heart. Making the efforts to get to Washington, D.C. and actually share our stories is of the utmost importance to all of us across the nation. We want federal laws to protect the elderly forever. Now, when it comes to funding, we don't do that. There are some organizations that do, accept funding, and you can always contact me at elderlylivesmatterusa.org, and I can give you those organizations that do. But as far as my organization and many, we stay up night and day, texting, talking, trying to help people. If it's an emergency, we're like, okay, we got to take care of this person, that person. But I would love to talk to you further about that, because we have thousands of people, tens of thousands of people who would be willing to go to Washington, D.C. and change these laws. We don't want this anymore. It is, I can't tell you how terrible it is to watch an elderly person suffer. And I'll just tell you, kind of go down the line, because it's important that I let you know what's really going on. I have Mary Bush in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Her mother was penetrated by her own son in a rest home. And that's on a court document. Okay, she died in a rest home. And Mary, when she went to go find her mother, she found her under toiled soil at the local cemetery. Her mother's, all of her property was taken. Everything she worked hard for, everything was taken out from under her. Her husband was a veteran, and now they're coming after Mary, trying to put Mary in jail as an activist for standing up for the human civil ADA rights of her mother. I have Janice Grenadier. She is an ADA advocate in Virginia. She has stood up for so many people, I couldn't even tell you. She was even helping the January 6th people. She also helped a young Black man who was beaten up in the courtroom, and she stood up for his rights, and she got beat up in the courtroom too. These are activists that stand up and fight every day. I have Bob Gettinger from Ugly Judge and court victim. His mother died in an abusive conservatorship. Carrie Kasem, who's been an amazing friend and amazing fellow activist. She has written visitation laws in about 30 states, I think. Kelly Rooney, Travis Campbell, and Trudy Campbell were all on the board of Kasem Cares together. We do what we need to do to fight. I also have Stuart Hansey and Roger Hilligus. Stuart Hansey is a sheriff, a 30-year veteran sheriff. Roger Hilligus was a fireman. They went to save his mother from a physically abusive, she had bruises on her body, rest home. They removed her from the rest home at her request, and they got chased down and they got accused of kidnapping. And that's kidnapping his own mother. So think about it. It's your mom. You want to go save her. It's your second mom. You want to go save her. But you get put in jail for doing so, right? I have Sue Reeves in New Jersey. Her son, or they're trying to save her son's father, Skylar Davis. He's 8 years old. He is the youngest guardianship activist in the nation. He knows what he's talking about. He's 8 years old. He shouldn't know anything about guardianships and conservatorships. There's people everywhere. Brad Sharp, Ashley Sharp from Save Johnny Sharp. There's so many people. So I would love to talk to you about it, about assisting us. We would be so thankful. It's very kind of you. We could use the support.
Well, let's have that conversation offline, but you can definitely count me in.
Thank
Folks,
you.
elderlylivesmatterusa.org. There you see it, elderlylivesmatterusa.org. But folks, this is an important fight. I'm delighted that Angelique could join us today and lay this out. You're going to be hearing a lot more from us and about this. Angelique, I want to help to get you booked on some other shows of my colleagues, because I think the more people who know about this problem, the more people we can enlist help from. So thank you so much for joining us today in the Stone Zone.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. What I'm going to do, Caleb, is I'm going to throw a 10-second video here at the end, which Enrique will get you. So let me just promo it, and then we can put it together. So, folks, I had a terrific interview with the Spectator in the United Kingdom. We're going to show you a little clip of that. And beyond that, I'm Roger Stone. This is the Stone Zone. We will see you tomorrow. God bless you and Godspeed. Matt was selected First of all, because he has intimate knowledge of the Russian collusion hoax. Now, the Democrats keep saying it's retribution or it's revenge. No, it's justice. If John Brennan, who clearly asked British and New Zealand and Canadian intelligence to begin monitoring Trump friends and allies and supporters so that he would have deniability. Why is the CIA director spying on friends of the Republican candidate for president? That's just the beginning. The Russian collusion hoax. The claim, for example, that the Russians hacked the DNC and that information somehow made its way to WikiLeaks is just false. There's no evidence of that. In my own trial, the FBI admitted that they had never inspected the computer servers of the DNC, and they relied entirely on a report from a company called CrowdStrikes. The judge denied my defense a copy of their report in my trial, but it was later declassified, and the president of CrowdStrikes, Sean Henry, who just coincidentally happened to be Robert Mueller's deputy at the FBI, admitted under oath before the House Intelligence Committee that his report had no such proof, that there is no proof that the Russians hacked the DNC. In fact, I wanted to introduce expert testimony and forensic evidence in which I could have proved there was no online hack, but the judge, of course, would not allow that. So the point, I guess, is that I do think that Matt Gaetz, as Attorney General, is going to examine the role of certain high-level government officials in the Obama administration, such as John Brennan, such as James Comey, such as Susan Rice, as well as the actions of Adam Schiff. You see, unfortunately for Senator Schiff, no one is above the law, not even him.
Let's go back a little bit back onto Susie Wiles, because what you were talking about there and her relationship with Ron DeSantis is very interesting. The kind of reporting I've read is that there was some falling out between perhaps Casey DeSantis, Ron DeSantis' wife, and Susie Wiles, and that breakdown between DeSantis and Wiles ended up really hurting DeSantis, and Susie Wiles came out okay from it.
Well, first of all, Susie has been very circumspect about the reason why Ron DeSantis went out of his way. He didn't just fire her; he tried to destroy her. I mean, he not only canceled her contract working for the Republican State Committee, he canceled her contract working for his political action committee. He canceled her. He persuaded then campaign manager Brad Parscale to cancel her contract working on the president's reelection. He pressured the lobbying firm that she worked for. And by the way, no, she's never, ever represented Pfizer or any pharmaceutical company. That's a canard that bounces around the United States. Susie, who is, by nature, been a friend of mine for 30 years. We go back to the Reagan campaign together. We both worked for Jack Kemp, the legendary New York congressman. She's been very circumspect about that. Now, if you go back and look at the clippings, there's a piece on this, I think in the Wall Street Journal, that's incorrect. There was no one who would stand up and defend Susie Wiles at the time. No one, however, except for me, because she's a woman of enormous talent and enormous integrity. Yeah, I do think that gave her unique insights into the personalities of Ron and his rather overbearing and self-important wife. I think that contributed to his ignominious defeat in the Iowa caucuses, the rest of the presidential process.
Let's talk about Florida more broadly or generally, or in historical terms perhaps. We've seen perhaps Texas have such a big influence over Washington with the Bushes. Do you think that's a comparable situation to what is going on now with Florida, as in terms of the state exerting quite a lot of power over Washington.
Well, I think it's really important to understand that Florida didn't even essentially have a Republican Party until the late 1950s. This was a one-party state. We the Democrats here were obviously quite conservative. The Conservative Party had two wings. It had a conservative wing and it had a liberal wing, but there really was no Republican Party here until the late 50s. I'm ready to concede now. Wasn't sure. In 2022, DeSantis won a 22-point victory. But I argue to you, if we had not had a hurricane in the 3 weeks before the election, in which Governor DeSantis was able to command all media attention, and frankly, to give him credit, was, I think, very effective at moving state resources around quickly to help the state recover and rebuild bridges. And he did an excellent job. I can't take that away from him. But his opponent, Charlie Crist, who had been a Republican governor, then an independent Senate candidate, and then a Democrat congressman. One of my favorite jokes is a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent walked into a bar, and the bartender said, "Hi, Charlie." Anyway, he is a great politician in his own right, but he was depending very much on free media coverage. And of course, he got none because of the hurricane and DeSantis's role. So that big win, I thought, was an anomaly. In other words, I believed then that this is really a purple state. It's not as reliably Republican as people may think. This last election may have disproved that, because Donald Trump now becomes the second statewide candidate to carry Miami-Dade County, which is, I still think, the largest county in the state. If it's not first, it's second. And it's habitually, we've done well there. There's a large number of Republicans there. You have to reach your goal level, but the county has always gone for the Democrat candidate. DeSantis broke through there. He carried it in the governor's race. Trump carried it in this race. So perhaps the state is becoming more reliably Republican. Also, deep inroads among Hispanics. Now, in the past, that has been limited largely to Cuban Americans, to some extent to Venezuelan Americans. But this time, Trump won among Puerto Rican Americans, who are, generally speaking, more located in the central part of the state. So I think Florida may be on its way to becoming a red state, and therefore will play a disproportionate role in national Republican politics.
And there's someone called Philip Blump, I think it is the name, or Bump maybe, who wrote a book called The Aftermath, which is about the demography of Florida and how Florida looks now a bit like he anticipates America will look in 2060. You have a very large older population, you have a growing Hispanic population, very significant Hispanic population, you have a large African American population. And so therefore the fact that Trump seems to have won this new multiracial coalition, or formed in many ways this new multiracial coalition, bodes quite well, one would think, for the future of the American right.
I'm unfamiliar with the book. If you speak of Philip Bump of the Washington Post,
yeah, I think I do,
which sounds unlikely, well, then nothing he's ever written is true or accurate. He's a guy who told us that there was never any legitimate claim against Bill Clinton regarding sexual harassment or rape, which I've written a best-selling book that proves that's wrong.
Yes.
So,
a man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?